California has reached a point where it feels like every week brings another restriction, another attack on the rights of ordinary citizens who simply want to defend themselves. The situation has gotten so far out of control that describing it as mind-numbing hardly scratches the surface anymore. Each time it happens, the justification is dressed up as public safety. But what really emerges is a patchwork of rules that create more confusion and less security. And while state-level laws already pile on hurdle after hurdle, local sheriffs have started adding their own personal spin, turning what should be a uniform system of concealed carry licensing into a nightmare maze of arbitrary bans. Not long ago, Contra Costa County set the tone for this disturbing trend. Out of nowhere, the sheriff's office there decided that weapon-mounted lights, lasers, and optics like red dots were no longer acceptable on firearms listed under a CCW license. In practical terms, that meant if you carried a pistol for self-defense and it had a light or a dot attached, you would not pass inspection during the licensing process. The policy was stated plainly on their own guidelines: firearms with those attachments would be rejected. And yet, there was no sound reasoning behind it. Think about it. This is the equivalent of telling drivers they must travel dark highways with their headlights switched off. It is absurd, dangerous, and completely divorced from reality. The problem is not whether an individual chooses to carry with or without a light. That has always been a personal choice, and it should remain that way. The issue is when the government outlaws something that is, in many situations, a life-saving safety tool. A weapon-mounted light exists for one reason: to help the carrier identify a threat in low or no light. Without it, one of the most basic firearm safety rules, know your target and what is beyond, becomes nearly impossible to follow. Removing that option doesn't make anyone safer. It makes every encounter in the dark more dangerous, both for the person carrying and for anyone who might be mistaken as a threat. And when it comes to optics like red dots, the logic is just as twisted. These devices improve accuracy, reduce stress when aiming under pressure, and provide a clear aiming point. For many shooters, especially those with vision limitations, they are not a luxury. They are a necessity. Banning them is pure nonsense. If the hypocrisy wasn't bad enough in Contra Costa, the infection spread next door. Alameda County, with nearly 2 million residents and home to a major city like Oakland, recently adopted the exact same rule. According to a notice dated September 10, 2025, the Alameda County Sheriff's Office declared that weapon-mounted lights and red dots would no longer be allowed for licensed carriers. For brand new applicants, this change is immediate. If you show up for your inspection with either of these attachments, your application risks being denied on the spot. For those already licensed, the hammer will fall at renewal. Attachments will be stripped from licenses as a condition of keeping them valid. This is not a minor technical adjustment. This is a massive shift in policy that touches nearly 2 million people in Alameda County alone. It means that ordinary, law-abiding citizens who went through background checks, training, and all the bureaucratic steps required just to earn their permit are suddenly told that a light or a dot or tools that law enforcement themselves rely on daily are forbidden. The policy carves out no exception, no recognition of the fact that safety gear is precisely what makes defensive firearm use less risky in high-stress, low-light situations. Instead, it slams the door shut, without explanation beyond a bureaucratic decree. And when you look at the map, the pattern becomes obvious. Contra Costa and Alameda sit side by side. This isn't a coincidence. This is copycat regulation. One sheriff borrowing a bad idea from another, spreading a trend that threatens to roll across the state. This is where the policy stops being just misguided and becomes flat-out dangerous. Firearm safety has one simple principle: know your target and what lies beyond it. In low light, that rule cannot be followed without proper illumination. The counties pretend a pocket flashlight solves the problem, but reality does not wait politely. In a real encounter, you may need one hand free to open doors, move children, call for help, or hold off an attacker. Juggling a separate flashlight while under stress is a recipe for mistakes. A mounted light keeps both hands where they belong, on the gun, and ensures you can see exactly what you are pointing at. Weapon-mounted lights give clarity at the moment it matters. They reveal faces, clothing, and objects, so you know whether the figure in front of you is a stranger with a knife or your own teenager sneaking into the kitchen. A burst of light can stop a threat cold, or just as importantly, prove that there is no threat at all. That is how you avoid tragedy and prevent a panicked shot. Stripping this option away does not make encounters safer. It makes them more chaotic. The same is true for optics. A red dot is not some flashy gimmick. Under stress, fine motor skills vanish, pupils dilate, and tunnel vision sets in. The perfect sight alignment you practice on a range falls apart in a hallway at midnight. A dot provides a single bright reference on the same plane as the target, letting the shooter focus on the situation, not on lining up blurry metal posts. For older shooters or anyone with vision issues, it is not a convenience. It is survival. Faster confirmation and more accurate hits mean fewer stray rounds and more accountability for every bullet. These are not tactical luxuries. They are safety tools that reduce errors when lives are on the line. A homeowner who recognizes a family member instead of firing blindly has avoided disaster. A parent who sees a bystander behind a suspect knows not to take the shot. Lights and dots give options. Banning them erases those options, leaving only uncertainty. If safety were the real concern, sheriffs would encourage better equipment, not forbid it. Supporters of the ban wave it away by invoking experts, as if repeating the word ends the argument. We saw this back in 2023. Attorney Costa reached out to Costa about their ban, only to be told the sheriff's experts had advised keeping it. What exactly did those experts endorse, forcing citizens to violate the most basic rule of safe shooting by guessing in the dark? That is not expertise. That is negligence dressed up as authority. The disconnect could not be clearer. Across the country, law enforcement agencies issue sidearms with mounted lights and optics because they know those tools save lives. Federal training standards stress the obvious. You cannot ethically fire without identifying your target, and you are responsible for every round. Those truths do not change, depending on whether a gun is carried by an officer or a permitted citizen. The laws of physics and the stress response of the human body are the same no matter who pulls the trigger. Yet these counties pretend otherwise, carving out an exception for deputies while denying ordinary people the same equipment. That hypocrisy reveals the real motivation. This is not about danger to the public, it is about discomfort with armed citizens. The lights and dots are not banned because they make shootings more likely. They are banned because they make ordinary people more capable. And capability is what these sheriffs fear. They hope that by piling on enough frustrating rules, applicants will simply give up. But those of us paying attention understand what is at stake. Lights and dots are the line between guessing and knowing, between panic and control, between a fatal mistake and a clear, safe decision in a second of truth. Policies like these are not isolated mistakes. They reveal a larger pattern running through California, a state that treats gun control as a political sport. State lawmakers already passed sweeping restrictions. SB 2 in 2024 banned concealed carry in wide categories of sensitive places, while 2025 brought more rules limiting where and how license holders can legally carry. Add the one gun per 30 days rule now applied to private transfers, the ammunition background checks, and constant pushes for micro-stamping. The environment is already suffocating. Local sheriffs then add bans on lights and optics, layering ideology on top of ideology. Look at where these bans appear. Contra, Costa, Alameda, counties with leadership eager to prove progressive credentials. Instead of trusting vetted, trained, law-abiding adults, sheriffs pile on arbitrary obstacles. They cannot revoke the right directly, but they can choke it with restrictions until people give up. And while they speak the language of safety, the result is the opposite, stripping away the very equipment that helps citizens act responsibly under stress. The strategy is obvious. Take a parent in Oakland who applies for a CCW after crime rises in the neighborhood. That parent passes checks, completes training, and shows up for inspection, only to be told the pistol they trained with is disqualified because it has a mounted light. Their choices remove the light, carry half-blind in the dark, or abandon the application. Many will simply walk away. That is the unspoken goal. Fewer applicants mean fewer carriers, and officials count that as victory. The consequences are predictable. Without illumination, every dark alley and shadowed parking garage becomes a trap of uncertainty. Without optics, shots fired under stress drift wide. That is unsafe for the carrier and unsafe for everyone nearby. Innocent lives depend on clarity, and these bans deliberately erase clarity. A mounted light can stop a tragedy before it starts. A red dot can ensure accountability for every round. Forbidding them multiplies danger, not safety, and the hypocrisy could not be clearer. Deputies carry guns equipped with lights and dots because their departments recognize reality. Their training insists on the very tools now being denied to ordinary citizens. Yet, the physics of low light and the biology of stress do not change based on a badge. The rules change only for political reasons. That double standard exposes what this is really about, not safety, not consistency, but control. The trend should alarm everyone. If Contra, Costa, and Alameda can adopt identical bans within 2 years, what stops San Mateo, Santa Clara, or Los Angeles from following bad ideas spread quickly, especially when wrapped in the language of public safety and applauded by political allies? One county copies another until the exception becomes the rule. Rights erode not always through one dramatic law, but through a slow drip of restrictions, each one defended as minor, each one chipping away at freedom. For those paying attention, the fight is bigger than attachments. It is about whether citizens are allowed to equip themselves responsibly, or whether officials will keep inventing ways to strip tools away. Lights and optics have become symbols of the larger battle between self-reliance and bureaucratic suffocation. To lose them quietly is to accept the slow collapse of the right itself. So let's be clear, this is absurd. No county should have the authority to make its people less safe in the name of politics. These rules are not designed to prevent accidents. They are designed to prevent applications. They exist to create frustration, to thin out the number of lawful carriers, and to make the right meaningless. That is the game. Recognizing it is the first step to resisting it. For now, all we can do is call it out, shine light on the nonsense, and stay vigilant as other counties consider similar moves. I will continue to watch, continue to speak, and continue to push back against every new restriction. Thank you for caring enough to stand against absurdity. And if you value this work, show your support. Like, subscribe, share, and keep this conversation alive. Because silence is exactly what they are counting on.